Hello viewers, welcome to Corporani. Real-time car trackings applications inside today need to see this here the creatings here the service called class as well as need to socket manager class need to develop here and also need to HTTP overrides class need to develop and also need to add this here the share preference plugins. Now first of all need to go inside the spub space and to need this here the three for library need to imports here the needs. First of all is the HTTP for the service calls need post methods to calling here. Share preference need to use this here the saving here the UDID for the creating here the one times and to again so need to get here the same UDID. If not found inside the share preference, then to create here the new UDID need to creating here and socket IO clients need to creating here the connections between here the server and application sides. Socket servers and socket clients need to connect and to real times sharing here the data. Like this, you need to purpose, you need to use this here the socket IO clients. Develop here the share preference variables you need to set inside the main files, imports and globally declares here the share preference. To write down here the share preference and to give this here the name as a preference optionals. Like this configures and also need to import here done and now need to write down here preferences is equal to await need to call here the since methods await and we need to set here the share preference get instance so need to call here and we need to set this here chats flutter pending dot ensure initialize methods we need to call here like here like this calling after so need to see this here and now we need to create here the some common files you need to develop here. First of all now need to go inside the screen libs folders and to create here the new folder as a common like this create here and we need to create here the first of the globe files dot like this creates and to write down here the class globe set here. Now need to set here the static variables const app name need to set here card tracking like this sets here. Then after need to check here the static void and to write down here the UD string set. Now need to pass here the data and need to set the string as a key and we need to write down here the preference variables need to call this here dots optionals need to write down here the set string give this here the data and data years and key and date like this sets for the sets here the value. Now need to retrieve this value write down here the old string val ud string val UD values string, and to give this here the string as a key, like the sets here. Now need to returning here the reference, and we need to get this here the get string key pass here, not get them to return here the blank value, return here the string like here, like this we need to callings. Now need to declare here the some sv class sv key for the service calls. We need to set this here the static dot const. We need to set here the main URL equal to, need to write down here the http slash colons. We need to write down here the local host 301, set here the ports like this configures. Now need to set here the static const base URL is equal to write down here the double quotes dollar main URL, and we need to slash API slash like this, need to write down here. Then after need to declare here the node URL is equal to, need to write down here the main URL like this configures, and to set here. Now need to declare here the some key for classes here dot key. Inside we need to write down here the static const payload is equal to double quotes inside the set here the payload key static const, and to set this here the status, set here the status key. Then after static const need to set here the message key. This is the basic key are the always required for these projects, and to write down like here. Then after need to use this here the class dot msg, and we need to write down here the static const success, set here the success. Then after static const write down here the fail is equal to set here the fail like this commons need to message we need to set here. And now this is the globe files are the developing done. Now need to creating here the my override http class we need to develop. Now need to create here the my http override overrided dot class we need to develop here. Set here the class, and to give this here the name overrideds extend, and to call this here the http overrides like this calling here, and to call this here the override method at the rate override, and we need to write down here the http client written here create http client, and to pass this here the security context optional as context like this, and to return this here the super dot create http client context, or here the bed certificate callbacks is equal to, need to past years certificates dot crt and string as a host and import return here true. Like this, need to creating here the override class we need to develop and to set here. Now we need to call this here the service code class need to develop here. Now need to write down here the command inside the new files and to create here the X form URL and codes API we need to calls for the postmans need to write down here the service call class dot darts and now need to create here the class and to give this here the name service call creating here. First of all, so need to set here the some static variables need this here the string user UUID need to needs here by default need to set here the blank and to set here the some common structures need to callback variables need to type offset need to set here the type depth response success need to pass this here the features functions need to call here like here same as type depth and request failures need to call here copy here and to return this here the errors as need to set here the dynamic like here like this need to creating here the type definitions need to create. Now we need to write down here the post methods. Now we need to write down here the http dot post methods and to pass this here the URI dot parse and to give this here the path like this configures body inside to pass this here the parameters header as a passed here the header value then to call this here the then operators need to get this here the value brackets here and last one is the catch errors block gets here the errors semicolons like this right down here. Now need to first of all need to set here the print value dot body we need to print here and need to import here the debug flags and fundamentals need to imports then after need to write down here the try catch like here and we need to write down here the where JSON object is equal to need to call this here the JSON dot code and to pass this here the value dot body as need to get here the app string dynamic optionals if not get like this then to calling here if need to check here the optionals if with success is not equal to null then to write down here the with success block bracket inside pass this here the JSON object like this calling here and to set this here else parts need to errors need to throw here the failure block and we need to pass this here the error object like here and to write down here the failure like here same as now need to copy and catch block inside need to returns here the error key and to like this setting and to configure this here and also need to write down here the try catch before the setting here the headers main try catch like here and to cut this code and we need to paste here if you and in case any gets any errors inside this function calling then need to call this here the this catch block against That's we need to handling this here the error calls, and to like this API calls are the need for the service calls. Now need to develop here the socket manager class we need to develop. Now need to go inside the common folders and to create here the new files and to give this here the name socket manager dot that's like this need to write down here the class name. Now first of all need to create here the class and to give this here the name socket manager, and like this sets here, and to first of all the create here the single stone class, write down here the static final, and we need to set here the socket managers as single stones need to declare here singleton is equal to need to call this here the socket managers dot internals methods need to call this here internal is create. First of all need to declare here the socket managers dot internal methods like here semicolons, then to write down here the first of all the import this library here, import set here the package socket IO, and socket clients need to set here as need to set here the IO like this sets. Now we need to write down here the IO dot socket, and we need to set here the socket variables like here. Now we need to write down here the static socket manager dot get, and to write down here the share is equal to get this here the singleton like here. Now need to write down here the void dot init methods need to call init socket to develop here these methods. Now socket is equal to write down here the IO dot sockets and to pass this here IO, and to set here the dynamic URLs sv key dot to pass here the node URL. Now need to set here the value as you need to set this here the transparent as web sockets, and auto connect need to set here the true. Like these connections are the needs here and to calling here. Now we need to first of all the check here the on events. We need to set here optionals on, and we need to give this here the event name as a on connect, and we need to get here the data like here. Now if debug need to set here the debug flags, and to print here the message socket connection connect done like this calling here, and to semicolons for this connect. If you same as now need to copy and to write down here the connection inside the getting any errors connection errors like this need to listening here, and connections errors so need to write down so need to like this data, and also need to print here the data like here. Then after same as for the errors now need to copy and paste, remove here the connected connect, and need to socket disconnect events need to fire here socket error like this fire. Same as now need to disconnect event disconnect like this sets, and to write down here the disconnect socket and show this here the data. And last one sockets we need to our on methods need to calling here the update sockets event, update socket in on node.js server inside to write down this like here, and we need to debug modes need to remove here and always print this here the value. We need to write down here the date socket, and like this flag are the printing gears and also show this here the data. Now need to write down here the functions future and update socket id api into calls machines methods. Now need to check here if service call dot udid equal to blank, then to return this here functions not executes. If not blank, then to call this here the try catch and to write down here the socket error here socket, and to call this here the emit methods and to call this here the update socket events to calls and to JSON encode past here the UDID, like these parameters need to needs here user UDID, like this need to callings. If gets any errors, now need to copy this flag and to write down here and to show this here the e dot to string, like this printing. Now after connecting, make sure you need to always call this here the connect events inside this functions calls, otherwise not working your connections with the socket node server, because we need to updating here the socket id against this UDID in node servers inside the running here the saving users against this socket id, like this need to this user this sockets like this identify for this API calls, like this calling here. Now need to go inside the main dot dots and to write down here the some coding. First of all need to pass this here the http override dot globes, need to call here my http override, so need to call here. Then after widgets flutters bindings ensures, then after the preference wait await methods need to calls get instance for the share preference. Now need to write down here the conditions here service call dot udid is equal to need to read this here the share preference value globes dots need to sd value dot string and to get here the key as a uuid, like here. Now set here the conditions if service call dot user id equal to blank, then to create here the new uid. Write down here the service calls dots need to uid is equal to need to set here the const uid and to call this here the version 6 creating shares, and also need to save inside the share preference set value need to give this here the value paste here and to set here the key name uid, like this set here and to configures. Then after need to initialize here the socket managers dot share and to call this here the init sockets events need to call this here, like this common structures are the developings are the done every node.js connect with the socket io need to these configurations always required if you any project inside the integrate node.js, and also need to api calls need to extend here, and now need to run inside the check here the connections create here run. First of all need to run this here the node servers need to test here work or not, so need to check here's, and two, this is the node server codes, node.app.js, like this write downs here, make errors, need to check here, first of all fix these errors, line numbers 14. Okay, here we need to make here mistake, here the files need to read here the directory, not file directory, since this is the mistakes, that's why need to get here errors, and also make sure, so need to here errors need to fix here, so need to set here the client dot id, because need to copy paste tomorrow, that's why I need to like these errors, not test, that's why. Now need to node.js servers are the runs, and to run these apps I need to check here's here, start here the simulator. And we need to get this here the update socket with this UDID, and creating this UDID, and also need to get here the socket update successfully message, need to get here the socket connections are the done, and to connecting here tomorrow need to see this here the showing here the car joins API post methods need to calls, and also need to updated cards UI with animations need to see this here. If you like this video, please give the thumbs up. If you're new user, so please subscribe my channels and press the notification bell icon. You can get every new video notifications and awesome content. If you have any questions, so please write down the comment sections. I will help you and sort out your issue. Everyone have a nice day. Goodbye and take care.